Overwhelm isn't just about being too busy or having too much to do and not enough time to do it in. It's also about feeling out of control and out of alignment with the things that are really important to us in our lives. And I've just come out of a period of feeling overwhelmed. And thankfully, over the years, I've learned some techniques to help me feel back in control. So in this video, I want to share with you what's worked for me. Hi, I'm Bev. I'm a postmenopausal Gen X woman with ADHD. So all things considered, overwhelm and feeling like life is out of control at times kind of comes with the territory, I think, for women of my age. But it's very easy to fall into a victim mentality and feel like everything is happening to us and that actually we don't have any control around what is going on. And thankfully, I've learned tools over the years that have helped me to reframe overwhelm and reposition that overwhelm into choices that I can make. Then the overwhelm can subside and we can get back on with living the life that we want to live. The trick here is to be an active participant in what's going on and to put in place positive measures that will move us out of overwhelm and into control. And that means being really honest with ourselves first and foremost, and accepting that we are not a victim, that actually we are completely responsible for all of our actions and all of our outcomes, but also being aware that there are certain things that we can control, certain things that we can't control, and some things that we might have an amount of control over, but not total control. And it's all about identifying those things that are within our control. And that, for the most part, is our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviours, our attitudes, and our actions. And once we're aware that we have control over those things, and if we want to, we can choose to think differently, feel differently, behave differently, and therefore get different outcomes. That's such a more empowering place to be than in this victim mode where we feel like we've got no hope. And I definitely have felt over the last couple of weeks, possibly even months, like I'd drifted into victim mode. And just because I have the tools doesn't necessarily mean I always know exactly when to use them. Sometimes something will happen and we have to remind ourselves that we have a choice. When we're feeling overwhelmed, our brain isn't working at its best. We've kind of switched out of the executive part of the brain that does the rational thinking, and we've moved into the more primal, emotional side of the brain. And when we're in the emotional side of the brain, our executive function isn't as good as it should be. And what that means is we don't always think things through rationally. And this is actually where coaching can be really helpful, or therapy. So whether it's a counsellor, a coach, a therapist, what happens is they're able to look at your situation without the emotional brain being engaged. They can look at your problem from a rational perspective, and just getting that other perspective, that having somebody there to help you see things a different way and just help you to calm that monkey brain, we might call it. If you've ever read The Chimp Paradox, you'll know what I'm talking about here. But that emotional primal brain, we need to calm it down. We need to get back to the point where it's our parasympathetic nervous system that's working, our rest and digest, calm and relaxed nervous system that's working. Because when we're overwhelmed, when we're anxious, we've moved out of that calm parasympathetic nervous system and into the sympathetic nervous system, or the fight, flight, freeze way of thinking. And when we're in that place, we are stressed, our cortisol levels are through the roof, and it's very, very hard to think clearly. So what I want to share is just a story really around what's happened to me over the last few weeks and what I've done to move myself out of that overwhelm and back into a sense of calm. And it's not a magic trick. It's just a case of having some tools to hand and actually using them. So I spoke earlier about responsibility, and this is probably one of the most important lessons I ever learned. I think I learned it from Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's about taking responsibility and having 100% responsibility for the choices, the decisions, and the outcomes that we have in our life. Now, I think the danger here is that we sometimes mix responsibility up with blame or fault. Responsibility isn't about either of those things. I think in Stephen Covey's book, he talks about if somebody leaves a baby on your doorstep, it's not your fault. You're not to blame. But if you do nothing, you're walking away from a responsibility. You may not have asked for that responsibility, but it's your responsibility to do something about that situation. We wouldn't just walk away and leave the baby there to fend for itself. So responsibility and blame are two completely different things. When we don't take responsibility, what we end up doing is going into that victim mode or martyr mode. That's another way. Oh, everything's all down to me. And actually, that's not very empowering either. But taking responsibility for our choices puts us firmly back in the driving seat. And from that point, when we accept that this is all in our hands, we can do something about it, that's so much more empowering. And that all starts with self-awareness, because we may not recognize when we've got into victim mode. Sometimes we've absolutely got to step back and look at what is happening and ask ourselves some questions. What is it I'm feeling here? What is going on? What's making me feel overwhelmed? What's making me feel anxious? How much of this is within my control and how much of it is not? So 18 months ago, I made the decision to burn my boats. I had a successful learning and development business, freelancing, going into businesses, talking about menopause awareness in the workplace. And I'd been building that business for about 4.5, 5 years, but I was burnt out. I had lots of clients, brilliant clients. I had more work than I could cope with, and I was burnt out. And I didn't really, if I look back, have the skills to know how to scale that and grow. I was literally just treading water to try and stay afloat. And I made the decision to shut that side of my business and start again. I didn't shut it completely, although that was the intention. When I say burn my boats, I literally decided overnight, good old ADHD impulsivity, to shut everything down. But it left me with a bit of a quandary, because I knew I wanted to work. I knew at the time I needed to earn money. So I had to do something different. And I was getting asked to help other people who wanted to get in front of corporate businesses, if I could help them get there. So I started working and promoting myself and marketing myself as a business coach. I'm a coach anyway, but I'd never thought about going down the business route. I didn't feel I was qualified to go down the business route. But people were asking me, how did you build your business? So I kind of decided that that's what I would do. I would help those people to take their business to a corporate market. And I've been doing that now for around about 18 months, maybe not quite that long. Problem here is I feel, looking back, that what I did was almost like being on the rebound from a relationship. It was that my business had closed. That was absolutely my choice. But it was like that relationship with that business had ended, and I dived straight into a new business, like diving into a new relationship on the rebound. And the problem with that was, although I love my clients, I love the people that I've been working with, they are amazing, I never really felt passionate about what I was doing. It never really felt like it was something that brought me huge amounts of joy. One of my core values is sort of individualism, this idea that we're all different and there's no one size fits all. So I think in my mind, I was thinking, well, this has worked for me and I can teach what I did. I only had my experience and I couldn't control a lot of external factors, like how much commitment somebody put into growing their business, how they showed up, their level of skill, sort of teaching or training skills. I couldn't control how much time they spent networking or getting, out and getting visible. There are lots of things outside of my control. But the main thing was just that I'd kind of dived into this business model around a subject that I wasn't driven by. That's not to say that I didn't try and serve my clients as best as I could. I absolutely did. But I didn't get the same level of fulfillment or satisfaction as I did from my training business, the corporate business. But I knew I didn't want to go back to that either. And in the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling very, very stressed, very anxious, very overwhelmed by it all. Because I'd actually started a membership for coaches wanting to get into corporate. And it had been running for a good few months. And we had a nice core, quite a small core of members. But there are amazing people in my membership. I love all of them. I don't think there's anybody that I don't love, if I'm honest. But I wasn't growing it. And I started asking questions of myself around, why am I not promoting this more? Why am I not in a hurry to grow it? And I was doing all of the stuff. I was doing busy work, but not productive work. I was procrastinating, trying to get to the bottom of what was the overwhelm. Why wasn't I trying to build this membership? What was I not doing? I was ploughing money into it, but I wasn't doing the real work, like getting out there and talking about it. A little bit I was, but not as much as I should. So I had to sit down and start asking myself some honest questions. And I started with the obvious questions. Why is the membership not growing? I love the idea of the 5 whys question. Why was I not growing the membership? Because I wasn't promoting it. Why are you not promoting it? I'm not promoting it because it doesn't feel fully aligned with what I want to do. Why doesn't it feel fully aligned? Well, I feel like I'm on the rebound from the other business and I'm not doing something that feels fully aligned with what I want to be doing. And then the questions changed. What would you rather be doing instead? And I just went through this self-reflection, these asking myself questions with a journal, great big book, big journal like this one, and just writing everything down until I could really get to the root cause of what was sitting at the core of my overwhelm. And I realised it was because I wasn't putting as much effort into it for a number of reasons. That's not true. I was putting a lot of effort in. I just wasn't putting the effort into growing it. And the reason I realised there were a couple. I wasn't aligned to the business. It didn't feel right. I realised that if I did plough the right amount of energy and the right amount of strategy into growing it, and it did grow and it was successful, I didn't have an exit strategy. Now I'm 59 in January, and I don't know that I want to be building something and scaling something at this age. I feel like I want to be doing the opposite. And this was another reflection that or another thing I identified as I was going through my reflections is actually I want to scale down, not up. I want to start slowing things down. I work a lot of hours and I really want to slow things down now, not speed them up or scale them up. And I think that's what's been at the root of the anxiety, this I don't know what to do, and also feeling out of control. And I had to sit down and do the exercise around, well, what can I control? What can't I control? And I realised that some of the things I was worried about were, what are people going to think about me? Are they going to think I'm a failure if I haven't built this part of the business up? If I close the membership without giving it a good try, am I going to be seen as flaky? What are people going to think of me? And I realised that that's out of my control. I can't control what people think of me. And no matter what I do, they will think something anyway. So that was a major concern. What will people think about me? And the other concern was, well, what will I do instead? And I thought, well, I can control that. I can decide what comes next. And There were lots of other thoughts that went into it. What are the logistics of it? But ultimately, it came down to what can I control and what can't I control? So I finally made the decision to close the membership. I did that this week. I let all of my members know, and they were brilliant. I've had some lovely messages and of understanding. And I feel so much lighter. I feel like a big weight has been lifted. And I think that's the litmus test of whether or not this is the right decision. And I think a good way to tell if you've made the right choice is with a few questions. Do I regret making this decision? I think that's always the first question. And you will know immediately if you're going to regret the decision. When I gave up work after 32 years working in an employed role to go self-employed, I have never, ever, ever once regretted that decision. When I closed the menopause side of my business, I never, ever regretted doing that. And I know with this decision around the membership, I won't regret it. It's a bit warm in here. I know that I won't regret it. I just have that feeling that this is the right decision. I'm very gut-led, I'm very intuitive, and I know that my gut is telling me this is the right decision. Another question to ask, does it feel heavy or does it feel light, having made that decision? And I feel light. If that was the wrong decision, it would still be sitting heavy on me, and it doesn't. It feels light. And I think the third kind of litmus test is, do I feel like I have acted with integrity? Am I in integrity with the decision that I've made? Now, if we look at the root of the word integrity, it comes from the Latin integer, or whole, complete. And in terms of integrity, when we're relating to a person, it's about the concept of being in line with one's personal values. And this absolutely feels like it's in line with my personal values. So the litmus test has been passed. It feels like the right decision. And the overwhelm has absolutely lifted. So here are a few of the things that I did at a practical level to reach the point where I am now. First up, I just had to take a pause and take a breath. Actually, literally stop and take a breath. And before I started journaling, I would just sit and take some slow, deep breaths. And there's a very solid reason why taking some slowed down, deep breaths helps. It's because when we breathe more slowly, it sends messages to the brain that we're safe and we're okay, and we can get back out of that adrenaline-driven stress response and back down into our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. It's very hard for the body to be stressed when we're breathing slowly. If you think about it, if you're in danger, your breathing speeds up, doesn't it? And often that's happening when we're feeling overwhelmed and anxious and we don't even realize it. So intentionally and consciously taking a moment to slow the breath down is brilliant. I do that before I start journaling because I want to start journaling from a place of calm, not from a place of stress. So literally just taking a few deep breaths, slowing the breathing down. And even if I wasn't going to be journaling, using that slowing the breath just to give me a pause and give me a moment to calm things down a little bit can really help. And as I said earlier, it's about getting honest and asking yourself some pretty clear questions. And as I said, some of the questions that I ask are why? Why am I feeling like this? But also naming the feeling. What is it I'm feeling? Is it anxiety? Is it fear? Is it anger? What is it that I'm actually feeling? And sometimes it's really hard to put a name to the emotion, but I think if we can do that, it then helps us to really get to the core of what the underlying problem is that we're feeling overwhelmed about. Once you've kind of got to the root of what the problem is, then you want to be looking at, well, okay, what choices do I have here? So with my membership, I had 3 choices that I could see. I could bite the bullet and grow it. I could leave it as it was and just let it tick along with the members that I have. Or I could close it. And I kind of did a quick pros and cons on each of them. And I knew that scaling and growing it, once I'd already identified what the questions I'd asked and the answers were around why am I not pushing this more? Why am I not marketing it? It was very clear that that wasn't an option I wanted to go with. I didn't want to scale and grow. So I was left with two options. Do I leave the membership as it is and just let it find its own way, or do I close it? And the pros and cons around leaving it were, I didn't feel that now that I'd identified that it wasn't the right decision for me to go ahead with to go forward with the membership, I didn't feel in integrity with my members to be showing up if I wasn't 100% committed to it. So that made choice number 2 not really viable for me. And when I did a pros and cons over closing the membership, I realised that that was the best choice, because we always have choices. We just have to identify them. And as soon as we feel that we have choice, we're able to make decisions. And when we make decisions, that puts us firmly back in control. And once you've made the decision on which choice you're going to take, you have to act on that choice. I think the worst place to be is in limbo, where you kind of made the choice, but you're not doing anything about it. You've made the decision, but you're still kind of playing around with it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do what I do every time and just dive in, burn the boats. Sometimes it takes planning, and this has been in the planning now for a couple of weeks. But the worst thing you can do is, I believe, make a decision and then do nothing with it, because it just leaves you in that overwhelm limbo, and you want to get out of that. And one of the best things you can do to feel better about your decision is to take small steps towards implementing it. You're taking an active role in solving the overwhelm. It's not a passive, it's there looking at you. You're actually taking control, and that is so empowering. That's where I am now. So I realised that things weren't right, that I was feeling overwhelmed and anxious. I did a bit of self-awareness. I had a bit of self-awareness. Did a bit of self-awareness? I don't know if that makes sense. I became more self-aware of what was going on. I journaled on it. I asked myself some hard questions. I looked at the choices available to me. I made a decision on the choice I was going with, and I acted on it. And today, I feel so much better for making that decision. And I feel now as if I can head towards semi-retirement, which is one of the things that came up in my journaling, that I want more time with my family. I want to work fewer hours. I want to do just the things that make me feel good, that feel aligned with what I want. Now, I did say I think coaching is such a hugely valuable tool if you're feeling in that stuck position. I don't think I could have done that for myself before I became a coach. I don't think I would have had the self-awareness or the tools to be able to do that. And even now to this day, I still use other people to help give me perspective, because they're not looking at the situation with their monkey brain. They're looking at it with their objective, executive brain. The prefrontal cortex is working for them when mine's gone on holiday. So I still do use other people's perspectives just to help me just get a clearer view of what's going on in my own head. So listen, if this has been useful to you, if you've got anything from this video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments, what are your best strategies for lowering your overwhelm levels? And if you are struggling with overwhelm and feeling a bit stuck, and you would like somebody to give you an external, objective perspective on what you're going through, that's exactly what a coach does, and that's exactly what I do to help. It can make so much difference. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.